Welcome to the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay. This is your positive path for spiritual living.
This morning I'm going to talk about, I think probably this is my favorite subject in the world, because it's something that I love so much, and that is this thing that we call unity. I heard the word, a number of times on Wednesday morning, and I realized I wasn't talking about the unity movement, but it doesn't matter. What a beautiful word. What an exquisite word, unity. It says so much with so few letters. I'm always grateful to Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of our movement, back in the 1800s, received that divine hit that said, the name is unity. Because it's such a beautiful word. This morning what I'm going to talk about is unity, and I'm going to talk about what I believe makes unity so incredibly unique. And I do believe, at least from my frame of reference, I've never found anything as unique as this thing we call unity. A lot of you right now probably think you have a pretty good idea of what unity is. I've been there and still am. I think I know what it is, but the beautiful thing about it is that it constantly reveals itself to me at deeper and deeper levels. So what makes unity unique? Well, first of all, in unity, we believe that God lives in Miami. So aren't you glad you live in Miami? Because God lives here in Miami. You really made a good decision. Now, of course, it goes a little beyond that, because we not only believe that God lives in Miami, we believe that God lives everywhere. Because God is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. So, yeah, God lives in Miami. We believe that, but we also believe that God lives in back in my hometown, Kansas City, alive and thriving there, Washington, D.C., not just this week, but every day, because God is everywhere present, and above all, God lives within you, and God lives within me. We believe this God that I speak of is non-judgmental and unconditionally loving. Now, you see, the interesting thing has happened. God made us in God's image and likeness, and then we turned around and returned the favor. We have made a God that exists in our image, the image that we've held of ourselves and other people, which is, even on the best of days for me, relatively judgmental and not what I would call consistently, unconditionally loving. Have those moments, and I love them, but God is not made in our image and our likeness. Do you hear me on that? Even though we have created this God, because we created this God out of the only frame of reference that we had, which was our own experience, but nonetheless, we are created in the image and likeness of God, and in unity we believe that God is non-judgmental. So all of you that have feared hell all of your lives, you're off the hook here at Unity. We also believe God is unconditionally loving. So it doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, who you've hung out with, and for all of this I say, thank God, because I've had anything but the perfection of an illustrious past. I've been in some pretty creepy places in my life experience. I bet you have too, because that's kind of the way life doles it out. But nonetheless, God is unconditionally loving you, embracing you, and holding you in extraordinarily high esteem at every moment in time. In unity, we believe that there is good in every religion. In unity, we're not about trying to find the differences between what I believe and what they believe and then argue those differences. We're saying everybody has their own unique understanding of spirituality, truth, and divinity. And that's okay. Imagine how boring life would be if we all were the same. Diversity is what makes life exciting and wonderful, and this is true of religion as well. I believe that everybody is practicing the religion that is right for them in any given moment. And I do my best to remain in a space of non-judgment regarding other people and their belief systems. Not always there again, but that's what I'm striving for every day. People like the next unique aspect of unity because it's so rare in religious circles. And this is what it is. We never tell you what to do. I'll stand up here and offer you suggestions. I can tell you what works for me. I can tell you about my belief system, but I'm really not in any position to make commentary about your belief system. I'm really not. So, though I may speak passionately, please hear me again, and I try to say this at least from time to time here. Never, ever, ever believe anything I say. I could stop right there. Unless it resonates in your own heart. And I say this not about just myself alone, but have you noticed? I was just talking about this morning. There are so many opinions. And now more than ever, just try to go get a piece of sound advice from somewhere. There's a deluge of opinions. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I've done, and maybe by, at least on my better days, by following along and saying, well, he did that, I could try that on if it feels right to me. But never will we tell you what to do. Here's another thing, too. We don't try to fix you. Have you noticed all the people running around on the planet that are totally preoccupied with fixing themselves, each other, and the world? Well, why wouldn't we try to fix you? Because we know that you are not broken. And if you're feeling a little bit broken in this moment this morning, let me just assure you that it's only because you've accepted some ideas about yourself that are broken, perhaps, but you're not broken. You're strong, you're brilliant, you're brave. We also believe in unity, and this is kind of outlandish and audacious for many. We believe that you have direct access to God. So you'll never find me standing up here saying, come on up here after the service and I'll pray for you because I got a special connection here with the Almighty and the Divine and I can hook you up. But you need me to hook you up because you can't hook yourself up by yourself. You'll never hear that in unity because we know that as God's perfect creation, you have a direct conduit, so you don't need any intermediaries. Now, what's happened is we've learned not to trust this. We were told in our younger years, oh, you can't count on intuition. You can't count on gut feelings. You can't count on those things that just you know are right because in your heart you get it. We've said you have to follow all these prescriptions. You have to follow all these endless rules and regulations that have been created by society, by political structures, and above all, by religions. Now, that's not good and that's not bad. It's just, from my perspective, the way it's been. The other wonderful thing about unity that I've got to think about before I say this. I was going to say, I don't think I see this demonstrated in too many religious circles, but that might be a little judgmental, so now that I've said it, it's too late to back up. But we respect your intelligence. We respect your dignity, and we respect your right to independent thought, whether anybody else agrees with you or thinks the same way or not. Now, for many years, most of my years on the planet, I believed that this unity thing was really all about a teaching. So I read the books. I wanted to understand the teaching. I wanted to understand the prescription that if I followed would make my life better. And unity is a teaching. There's a letter, if you will, to our way of being. But it's so much more. It's more than a teaching. It's actually an ongoing, constant way of being, an ongoing, constant way of perceiving and living your life. And here's the way it seems to me at this point in my understanding that it unfolds. It starts with what I'm going to call divine discontent. So you experience something individually on a certain day or collectively you feel it mounting, this divine discontent. There's like a restlessness and uneasiness, or there could even be a depression or a sense of overwhelmment or panic or crisis, you know. Right now, there's a lot of divine discontent going on in the world around us. And then we begin to realize, though this process can take a while, that something is failing. You see anything failing out there in the world today? Something that doesn't seem to be working like it used to? You see something failing. Always, no matter what it looks like out here on the scene of things, it's a belief that's failing. because belief is behind materialization and demonstration. So we realize in this divine discontent, an old belief is failing me. And it's important to realize when the old belief is failing that there's a new belief coming along. You know, you can't always see it, and sometimes you think it's the end of the world, but it's not. Always and ever, when an old belief is departing, a new belief is arriving. But the key is you and I, my friends, have to be willing to be impacted by that new belief. And so often, if we're buried in the old belief that isn't working for us any longer, we're addicted to it, to that old belief. It may not be working, but it was comfortable and it worked for so long, we don't want to just let that old belief go and accept a new one. We have to be willing to allow ourselves to be impacted by new ideas and then trust the unfoldment that follows. And this is the formula that created the movement, this unity movement of which you are a part, whether you realize it or not. Yeah, it's a teaching, but it's a teaching that was born out of that prescription of life, old beliefs falling away. You know, it started for me back in, and I've shared some pieces and parts of this story with you in the past, back in 1991. And I'd been born, raised, educated within Unity. At the time, I was raising my family at Unity Village, our world headquarters. It was kind of a euphoric existence, actually. And the more I look back on it, the more I realized how privileged and fortunate I was to live in this Mecca, this big, beautiful spiritual bubble in the middle of, well, it's not in the middle, but it's in the state of Missouri. And I really had this inner longing that I've shared with you before. I wanted to be a spiritual leader. Now, at the time, I thought I knew what that was. I was so far from understanding. I thought, spiritual leader is going to be somebody who's like got this certain level of enlightenment, intelligence, education, awareness, and then is going to impart that to other people and maybe in some small or large way change the world. And then I've told you many times about my great theological crisis. Actually, it was more than a theological crisis. It was just a life crisis that sprung up in 1991, where this wonderful way of this teaching that I had been following seemed to be failing me. And my life was like falling apart in bits and pieces and sometimes large clumps right onto the ground. And it was a very difficult time for me to go through, and I felt betrayed by the Unity way of life because these teachings, I must not be thinking the right thoughts, but I was thinking the right thoughts, or I thought I was, and yet life wasn't working out well for me. And a number of challenges came up. It was at that time that I was introduced to the pages of Course in Miracles, which you know is one of my favorite books, A Course in Miracles. And I started receiving. Here's what was happening. You see, it was that recipe was at work. An old belief system was failing me. A new belief system was emerging. I was so in pain and suffering from the old system not supporting me that I was having difficulty. And then this new teaching came along, very difficult and challenging to grasp at first. A lot of people didn't think it was very unity of me to be studying Course in Miracles, but you see what was happening was the universe was putting a crowbar on my mind, on my belief system, and saying, time to prop open that which you have understood or thought you understood so well so that you can expand into newer beliefs and understandings. It was at that point that I began, and I got a lot of controversy in the Unity movement. People were saying, well, you're not teaching Unity anymore. Well, from a crumbled life, I was trying to put pieces back together in this book, Course in Miracles, and then lots of other influences started coming in to my awareness that may or may not have seemed to be in accord with what we would consider mainline Unity teaching or understanding. And it was at that time when I was working at our world headquarters at Unity Village that I asked the leadership at that time if we could bring someone in to study the unfoldment of the Unity teaching over the years it had been in existence, like 100 years, and see if there wasn't something more than the letter of the teaching. See if there was a spirit behind this. And we brought in, and I'm so grateful we did, this fellow by the name of Neil Volley. He had been the editor of New Realities magazine, so he was a completely objective resource. And he came in and he did a thorough study going into the past and into all the different individuals who had influenced the evolution of Unity belief. And he came up with this book called The Unity Movement, which was commissioned through him to be produced. And this is one of the many gems of wisdom. This is like one of my Bibles. He said, Neil Volley, it appears the Fillmores, in developing their doctrine, were spiritual eclectics, using intuition to pull together the mix of teaching that they called unity, which for them represented spiritual truth. Let me read that again. It appears the Fillmores, in developing their doctrine, were spiritual eclectics, using intuition to pull together the mix of teachings that they called unity, which for them represented spiritual truth. That's more than a letter of the law, or that's more than a teaching. That is a way of exploring. And I believe, friends, that everything that comes to us in life is providing for us an opportunity to look at things a different way, to understand things a little bit differently. And if we're locked in hesitation, or we're so committed to this understanding of spiritual reality that we can't expand into a new, broader understanding of spirituality, we're not helping ourselves. The Fillmores investigated Emanuel Swedenborg, Franz Anton Mesmer, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Phineas P. Quimby, Mary Baker Eddy from Christian Science, H. Emily Cady, Emma Curtis Hopkins, all of these different individuals, and they went for what resonated with them. They were bold enough to say, nobody can convert me to another belief system save the one that is already inherent and in process within myself. And I'm not going to look to anybody or anything outside of myself to be the sole resource through which I find my way of living. I'm going to trust my own internal navigation system and gut, and let that determine what will be for me a religion like no other religion. A belief system that no one else will share because no one else has to. Everyone must find their own way to God, my friends. And because we are all so diverse and different and beautiful, we will find it. We will find it. But we have to have a little trust and a little faith in ourselves. Yeah, that felt right. I'm standing up here talking right now. If somebody goes, that feels right. No, that doesn't feel right. Good for you. Trust that. Only accept what comes to you if it resonates in the core of your being. Now, the history of our unity movement is really much more than a history story. It's the story of your life and my life right now. It's the story of this process that I'm talking about. You know, Myrtle Page Fillmore meets Charles Fillmore. Myrtle born in 1845, Charles in 1854. They get married. Myrtle gets a diagnosis that she's going to die in a short period of time, 6 months or so, from tuberculosis. Here's the peril. Here's the breakdown beginning to happen right there. And then she goes to the lecture by E.B. Weeks, I'm a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. New idea. I'm sure there was a little bit of resistance to that new idea. What the heck do you mean I'm not able to inherit sickness? Everybody inherits sickness. Doesn't matter. That was the statement. On some level, it resonated with her. She took it in. Then Charles begins in 1887 this massive study of many, many different fields of thoughts and religion. He recognizes the power of an open mind. I've told you many times, never make up your mind. You make up your mind, trying to make something concrete that's not concrete, something stagnant that can't be stagnant. Keep on, open mind, willingness to question current beliefs. Well, I believed this for so many years. Yes, and is it still mine to believe? A willingness to be impacted by new beliefs. And out of all this, Myrtle gets a healing. She's no longer suffering from tuberculosis. Charles Fillmore says, I was in sympathy with Mrs. Fillmore's continued demonstrations. In fact, my interest became so pronounced that I neglected my real estate for the furtherance of what my commercial friends considered a fanatical delusion. He thinks he can create his own religion. She thinks she can create her own belief system. That's a fanatical delusion. But I'll tell you what, if you give it license, it'll start to take you over, my friends. You will also become fanatical because you'll realize one of the reasons I'm here is not to go outside myself and find the perfect belief system that somebody else has found to be effective, but to find a belief system that is in complete integrity with who I am and what I am evolving into. So be prepared, my friends. You study this unity way of life. You may have a few friends that think you're suffering from fanatical delusion. But you know what? You probably had a few friends that thought you were suffering from fanatical delusion anyway before you ever got started on this path. So they found a magazine. They found a prayer movement. The name Unity is born in 1891. And Charles Fillmore says, "We have been readers among all the schools of thought, and we find good in all of them. We do not claim to have discovered any new truths, nor had any special revelation of truth. There is truth in every religion. It is my privilege to take truth from any source, put it into my religion, and make it a fundamental rule of action in my life. It is your privilege to take that which resonates as being right and true and beneficial for you and build it into your belief system, whether anyone else agrees with you or supports you or not." You see, it is out of that instability and insecurity around our belief systems that we go out looking for a new club to join or a new religion or a new church or whatever it might be to try to confirm us. And then we try to win over converts because we feel more comfortable if we have gathered 100 people around us to say, "Yeah, you're right." Instead of just saying, "I'm right for me, but I may or may not be right for anybody else here." And that's okay. That's really actually beautiful. 1924, that little Daily Word magazine was born, and here we are today. Some of us sitting in this room and some of us sitting at home, but somehow, like the Fillmores, we found a level of bravery and courage, tenacity, and audaciousness, if that's a word, to say, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to recognize or consider recognizing that I have the ability to know what is right and beneficial for me. I have the integrity to be able to construct my own belief system, to found my own religion. See, the Fillmores ended up with a set of teachings, and I think they're wonderful teachings, but it wasn't about the teachings, it was about the process that got them to those teachings. The process of facing crisis as an opportunity to release an old belief and embrace something new. That's why Unity is born in a movement called New Thought. And it's not just because one day a new thought came along and that was it. It's because every day when you go out into the world, there's a new thought, 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 a new way of looking at things, a new perspective, a new way of being. And not everybody has to follow you. You're perfectly capable of leading your own way. In the pages of an old former Unity publication called Weekly Unity that was around for years and years, but nowadays out of print, we read these words. In Unity, we place no obligations on anyone, nor do we place restrictions, believing and teaching that the Spirit of truth will, according to promise, lead into all truth. We know that each individual will be led to govern his life accordingly, and we do not interfere with personal matters. That's pretty astounding. That's pretty unique for any religious way of life that I'm familiar with. We're not going to tell you what to do because we believe that the same Spirit of truth, I believe, the same Spirit of truth that inspired the Fillmores so many years ago, that got me through that very dark night of the soul in the early 1990s, is alive in you right now in this moment. And all you have to do is open yourself to it and say, I'm willing to let go of an old way of being. I'm willing to embrace something new. You see, there's been a constant ongoing struggle between trying to organize everything on the earth plane. Well, you cannot, I cannot, we cannot organize our own spirituality, my beloved friends. We just can't do it. You can try to organize it into whatever you want. In Unity, there's been a constant ongoing struggle between the philosophy, the momentum of that philosophy, the evolution of that philosophy, and our desire to organize it into some kind of structure of churches or an international movement. But that structure has always been intentionally as loose as we could possibly keep it, because we realize this thing is not going, this energy, this vitality, this spirit of the Unity way of life is not going to be tethered down by nobody or no thing. It can't be done because it's alive inside of you. And as being alive, it's constantly in a state of growth and expansion and forever introducing you into a new way of being. There is, my dear beloved friends, Unity on the Bay family, a spirit of liberty and justice within you. It's more than our country. It's more than anything you'll find in a religion. It's more than you'll find even in the profound and enlightening teachings of our way shower and teacher and elder brother, Jesus Christ. It is the Spirit of God, the Spirit of life within you that even right now is bringing forth, I believe with all my heart, the way, the path, the truth that is right for you. Every one of us in this room and all of you at home, we can follow our own guidance, and yet we can still dwell together in unity.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Positive Spiritual Living Podcast, brought to you by Unity on the Bay, a spiritual community located in Miami, Florida. Unity on the Bay is supported by the generosity of its community. If you'd like to make a donation or learn more about Unity on the Bay, please visit unityonthebay.org. You can also follow Unity on the Bay on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for even more positive spiritual inspiration. Until next time, thanks for listening and many blessings. Namaste.